welcome back to Mary Lane. I'm Maddie, and today I'm going to be talking about some of my favorite books. So I have 5 books out in front of me, and they all have a couple things in common, which is that they're all nonfiction and they're all written by women. So obviously these are books that can be enjoyed by anybody, but in the last few years I've been getting really into nonfiction, and I do just really enjoy reading nonfiction that's written by women. I just feel like it adds a little bit more of a relatable aspect for me personally. I find that as a broad generalization, when women author nonfiction, they tend to add a lot more of their personal perspective on the issues that they're writing about than when I read nonfiction authored by men. I feel like when I read female authored nonfiction, I learn a lot more about that author's own life and their own story, because they're often more reflective about how their perspective and identity and lifestyle shape their view of the issue that they're writing about. So it's just something that I personally enjoy. And in the past couple of years, I've read a lot of books that I really love and a lot of nonfiction books that I really love. So I thought it'd be fun to kind of go through and talk about them. Obviously, I won't be giving away spoilers in case you want to check any of these out. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. I'm gonna go ahead and start with the one that I've seen the most people talk about, because I feel like if you've heard of any of the books in this video, it's probably this one, and that would be Braiding Sweetgrass. It's by Robin Wall Kimmerer. Its subtitle is Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teachings of Plants. And I love this book so much. This is a pristine copy because I checked this one out as an audiobook from the library and loved it so much that I immediately ordered a physical copy to keep on my shelf. But this one is just, I love this book. I just have a feeling that this is going to be a book that I am going to revisit multiple times throughout my life. It is just so, I don't even know how to describe it. It makes me feel so many things. So it's written by Robin Wall Kimmerer, who is a member of the Potawatomi Nation and also an academic in the field of biology. And so she does a really good job of kind of talking about the differences in academic ways of knowing versus traditional indigenous ways of knowing, and where they overlap, and how her background as an indigenous woman shapes her journey through academia. And it delves into a little bit of memoir too, as she talks about moving to a new place and learning the ecosystem and raising her daughters. And I feel like, especially if you are someone that's very environmentally focused and thinking a lot about the planet and kind of the choices that we're making, I really love this one because it felt very inspiring to me in a way of trying to live more sustainably, but it doesn't shame you, if that makes sense. It's a very kind of uplifting book that talks about the reality of climate change and environmental issues, but at the same time, Robin Wall Kimmerer just has such an amazing presence as an author that it does feel comforting, even though the state of the world can be quite bleak. For this one especially, I highly, highly, highly recommend the audiobook, especially because there are some Potawatomi words that the author is using that if you were just to read them, you might not necessarily know how to pronounce them. And Robin Wall Kimmerer has such a great narrating voice that yeah, 10 out of 10, I would recommend the audiobook over the physical version, but obviously physical copy is great too. And yeah, this one is just, I hold it very near and dear to my heart. I've seen it get a lot of hype, and let me tell you that it absolutely deserves it, in my opinion. I just think it's a really great one. I would love to see this become like required reading. This is one that I think people are going to be talking about for a long time, and they absolutely should be. But yeah, this one is just an absolute masterpiece. Read it. Read it. Even if you don't read nonfiction, read it. I don't think you'll regret it. Okay, the next one I think I'm going to talk about is, I'll go to this one. This one is Joyful by Ingrid Feta Lee. And I mean, for one thing, I freaking love the cover of it. But this is a really fun one. So Ingrid Feta Lee, I believe she said, it's been a couple of years since I read this one. So I'm not like, it's not super close in my mind, but to my memory, she has kind of an interior design background. And this whole book is kind of her journey into researching design aspects and aesthetics that are scientifically proven to make people happier. And so throughout the book, she's kind of deep diving into different shapes and color palettes and textures, and also traveling the world to go see all of these different design marvels. So let me crack open the table of contents. So the table of contents kind of goes through different design elements. So there's energy, abundance, freedom, harmony, play, surprise, transcendence, magic, celebration, and renewal. And so for each of these chapters, she's talking about these amazing locations and all of these different things. And I did read this one through audiobook as well, but I would recommend the physical book for this one, because as I was listening, I kept being like, oh, I need to like write that down so I can look it up later. Oh, I need to look that up later. And I ended up wishing that I had a physical copy to like flip back through, which is why, of course, I ended up buying it. This is how I acquire most of my nonfiction books, is I find nonfiction easier for me personally to listen through audiobook. When I'm faced with like a physical nonfiction book, I always find that I get like too bogged down in remembering all the details. But for this one, because there are so many different designer names and place names that she's going to, I really enjoyed getting a physical copy as well. But yeah, this one was just really fun. It's not really an advice book about like necessarily incorporating these techniques into your home, although you could. I don't know, I thought it was a really fun perspective, and at the time I read this, I was going through a little bit of a rough patch, and so just hearing someone talk about happiness and about the power of changing your living space to affect your mood just really like put me in a more positive headspace. So this one is definitely a fun one. It's kind of a long one, not terribly long, but it's a little bit dense, but there's a wonderful like index in the back, so if you want to go back to anything later, it makes it easy for you to find, which I think is really helpful. But yeah, Joyful by Ingrid Feta Lee. Excellent. The next one I think I'm gonna go for is this one. So this one is called This Is Where You Belong by Melody Warnick. Melody Warnick has only written a couple of actual like full-size books. She's written a ton of articles for like all these different publications, but I would love for her to write more full-length books because I loved this way more than I thought I would. Again, I checked out the audiobook from the library, adored it, immediately went out and bought a copy so I could have it to reference. But this one came into my life right when I needed it. So about a little over 5 years ago, I moved from Indiana to Seattle. And when I first started living in Seattle, I lived right in the heart of the city. And I lived in Seattle proper for about a year and a half before a combination of factors meant that I was going to be buying a home instead of continuing to live in an apartment. And in order to do that, I had to move out of the city and into the suburbs because, of course, as in any major city, housing prices are absolutely insane. There was no way that I was ever going to be able to afford a house in the city. It just wasn't in the cards. And so I ended up moving out to a suburb, and for a while I was really bummed about it because the things that I loved about being in the city, where I could walk out of my apartment and go around the block for a cup of coffee or walk to Pike Place or any of these other things that I wanted to do. Now I was in the suburbs and I had to drive everywhere, and I was further away from everything I wanted, and I had to drive to work instead of taking public transit. And so even though I was so happy to be in a home and have my own space that way and have more space that way, I was really not sure how I liked being in the suburb. And so I found this book because the whole premise of this book is learning to enjoy the place that you live. And so Melody Warnick, let's see. She moved from Austin, Texas to Blacksburg, Virginia. And she also really struggled with learning to love Virginia. And so through this book, she goes through all of her different kind of quests to learn to love her city. And honestly, just reading this made me feel so much less alone. And now that I have been living in my small suburb for 3.5 years, is that true? Yeah, we've been in this house for 3.5 years. I can genuinely say that if I had the option to buy a house in the city, I don't know that I would. Like, I really do love my neighborhood now and I enjoy where I live. And part of it was definitely due to this book. She has a lot of great techniques in here about kind of getting to know your local businesses and getting to know your neighbors and your neighborhood. And yeah, I really deeply enjoyed this one. And so I think that there are times in our lives where we kind of put ourselves in this like limbo situation, and we don't get too attached to things because we view them as temporary. I know that when I was a college student, I felt for a lot of the time in college that I was just in limbo, kind of waiting to go out into the real world. And consequently, I didn't put as much time and effort into my like college housing and the choices I was making when I was living in my college town as I maybe would have liked to, because I was viewing it all as temporary. But the thing is that even when something is temporary, it can still be worth the work and worth improving. And so even if you're just kind of in a shitty apartment for a year, or you're moving somewhere for a summer internship and you're only going to be there a couple months, it is still worth it to try and enjoy where you are. And when I first moved here, I think a lot of people also kind of perpetuated the idea that, oh, like it's okay if you don't love it because this is like a starter home or whatever. It's like, oh, like you can just save up and then move somewhere better. But the reality is that you can still, like, even a temporary thing can still feel like a long time. And so I'm rambling and getting off track, but it's worth it to try and enjoy where you're at, is what I'm trying to say. Even if it's not forever, trying to enjoy the process instead of always looking forward to the next thing is still a worthwhile endeavor. And so if you're having trouble enjoying where you currently are, especially if you're struggling with your physical location, something like this might be helpful for you too. Melody Warnick also has a great book that isn't even like applicable to me, and I read it anyway just because I so enjoyed her writing, but it's called If You Could Live Anywhere, and it's about all these people that have remote jobs, or not even necessarily like work remote jobs, but are pursuing different sorts of lifestyles and potentially have the ability to move anywhere, like what different locations mean to different people. And yeah, if you're someone that's considering moving somewhere new, that's a really fun one as well. I don't have a physical copy to show you, but again, it's available through most public libraries. But yeah, this one, really good. Love it a lot. Okay, I have 2 books left. I think next I'm gonna go for this one. This one is called If Women Rose Rooted by Sharon Blackie. And this is, I think, the one I've read most recently out of this grouping. And I love this book. Once again, I got it from the library as an audiobook, loved it, immediately ordered a copy because I knew that I would want to go back to it, and I already want to reread this book. I don't even know. I love it so much. It's kind of a mix of memoir and mythology. So what I'm learning is that Sharon Blackie has led a very fascinating life. She lives in, oh my God, I'm blanking for a moment if it's Ireland or Scotland. I think it's Ireland. I think she lives in Ireland. Anyway, it talks about her different moves throughout Europe, and she lived in the United States for a period of time, and she's jumped through different careers and met lots of very fascinating people. And in this book, she kind of interweaves stories from her life with Celtic mythology and thinking about kind of deep ancestral knowledge of the land, and humanity's relationship with the environment and the land that shapes us, and women's place in mythology and female figures. And it's just, if you are, I will say this one is going to be especially resonant if you are a woman, because it is just so rooted in femininity and what that has meant throughout history and what it might mean going forward. And yeah, I don't know, this one was it made me very self-reflective, which is something that I really enjoy with my nonfiction. I love a book that makes me think, especially about my wider place in the world. And this is a very good one about, I don't know, it made me think a lot about my roots and my ancestry and what kind of stories and art I want to consume. I don't know. I feel like I'm doing a terrible job describing this book, but I really don't know how to get into it without physically reading through copies of it. But it's really beautifully written. It's here. I can read the summary on the back. I should have probably done that for all of these. I didn't, but I'll read this one. Psychologist and folklorist Sharon Blackie leads the reader on a quest to find their place in the world. Drawing inspiration from wise and powerful women in British and Irish folklore and mythology, Sharon also shares guidance from contemporary role models who have rerouted themselves in land and community and taken responsibility for shaping the future. There you go. It's a little bit more of a concise way of describing what I wanted to say about it. But yeah, if you're looking for something to make you feel, I don't know, hopeful, connected, I loved this book. I would really, really genuinely recommend this book. I mean, I would really recommend all of these, but I would say out of all of these, this is the one that like moved me the most deeply. This one and Braiding Sweetgrass is pretty close. Braiding Sweetgrass made me think about the environment more. This one made me think about mythology and stories and storytelling more. Yeah, so good. And then the last one is not a dense one. It's mostly a photography book, but it's this one. And it's called Where Women Create, and it was done by Joe Packham. And this is a book of images from a bunch of different female artists' studios, and then kind of profiles of each artist talking about their physical space. And like the photography is stunning, the studio spaces are stunning, the artwork is amazing. This one is just a pure feast for the eyes. And I don't know if I'm particularly drawn to this one because I'm currently renovating my art studio. But this one really made me think a lot about how my physical like workspace impacts my own mindset and the kind of work that I want to create. And so this is an amazing book of all of these different artists talking about what they look for in their workspace, the kinds of colors and patterns and textures that inspire them and make them excited to create. And yeah, some of these are just like, oh my God. I love the portraits of like artists too, working in their spaces. Yeah, this one's definitely not nearly as dense in terms of a nonfiction read. It's really quick and easy to get through. I went through this whole thing in just an afternoon, and it's kind of older. So unfortunately, some of the like small businesses that it profiles aren't currently around anymore. Let me check the date on it. Yeah, this one is 2005. So this book is 20 years old. But I find that a lot of photography books from the 90s and early 2000s have such a nostalgic feel to me. I don't know if it's like the quality of the film or just the current like interior decorating trends that were in style then that we saw reflected in movies and TV shows. But it just feels so nostalgic for me as someone who grew up in the early 2000s that I really enjoy it. And yeah, I love a book that makes an effort to kind of highlight female artists in this way. And yeah, it's just a really fun one. I love it a lot. Yeah, those are all 5 of the books I had out. So Where Women Create, If Women Rose Rooted, Braiding Sweetgrass, This Is Where You Belong, and Joyful. So if you have read any of these books and want to add your thoughts on it, I would be so excited to hear them. And also if you have any other recommendations specifically for female authored nonfiction, I am always looking for more nonfiction books to read, so please feel free to let me know your thoughts. Thanks again so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!